Instructions from our client Makarina on behalf of over 1,500 disabled people in this country to file a petition to the Judicial Service Commission for the removal of one Judge Mrima of the Constitutional Division of the High Court. Reasons being that Makarina has instructed us on the following grounds. One, but the judge has been acting in a manner contrary to the expectations of the judge. That is enough ground for removal of the judge, in the sense that, one, when the judge sentenced one Judge Kinoti, he refused to get Judge Kinoti to come to court, to present himself, to defend himself, to show cause, and file his mitigation. Two, on the ground that the firearms that are being the subject of discussion are military firearms that can destroy a whole of Nairobi. The firearms are more than 790 rounds of ammunition, and they are military guns, over 14 military guns that are not supposed to be the hands of our citizens. The question Makarina is asking, if one Jimmy Wanjigi has that guns, how do you expect these people to run away when the bullets are coming from those guns? They are unable to run away. They use wheelchairs. They are worried about their safety, and that is why they have come to raise this issue. Third, they are saying that the judge who convicted the four, the Director of Public Prosecution, the Attorney General, the Inspector General of Police, and the DCI, four of them were convicted, but only one, Judge Kinoti, was sentenced for contempt of the court. So Makarina feels that that is not the right way to deal with it. And also the last ground that Makarina puts on is that the judge brought up ulterior, exterior issues, evidence that was not there. He has managed to get the proceedings of what happened in court and the sentence or the ruling. We have attached a copy of the ruling of the judge. The ruling is completely not a true reflection of what happened in court. The proceedings in court are different from the judgment of the ruling of the judge. So we have filed a petition for the JC for the removal of the judge, and there are very many other grounds Makarina will put across that demand that the judge has failed the test. And this is a procedure provided for under the Constitution, that any party aggrieved with the conduct of a judicial officer, you file to the Judicial Service Commission. Once the Judicial Service Commission finds that the grounds are substantive, they will recommend to the President to form a tribunal under Article 168. Then the judge, if found culpable, will be removed. It's not the first time judges have been removed in this country, neither is it going to be the last time in this country. So Makarina, and on behalf of very many vulnerable group, has filed this petition. He has annexed, for example, the Law Monthly Report, a magazine that clearly says that upon the DCI arresting one DCJ, Justice Mrima, there is going to be a serious attack on the Director of Criminal Investigation, and the judiciary will not be sympathetic to one Judge Kinoti. And according to him, according to our client, he is convinced that is why Judge Kinoti is being punished by one Justice Mrima. Those are instructions of our client. My client, you can tell the public what the issues are.
Kwa majina naitwa Michael Makarina, mimi ndio nasimamia Inua Mlemavu. Tuko wengi na Inua Mlemavu, sisi tumepitia mambo mingi. Ndio leo hii, kwa sababu mimi Jimmy Wanjigi ndiye aliandikia barua akanituma kwa Kinoti, na Kinoti alienda akajibu hiyo barua, na vile alijibu barua tulienda na Jimmy Wanjigi mpaka kwa Kinoti, na tukaelezewa pahali civilian tunaweza chukua bunduki zetu, na tukaenda huko na tuka-apply, na already Jimmy Wanjigi anajua na anajua fiti yake. Na hii evidence yangu nilipeana kotini. Judge Mrima hakusikiza evidence yangu, akasema mlemavu hawezi pata mtu wa kumtuma. So hiyo kitu ndio imeniweka kwa akili yangu nikuje nitetee haki ya walemavu, kwa sababu hata sisi walemavu ni watu, tunaweza tumwa, tunaweza fanya kazi. So naomba koti hii, na ndio nilipea mawakili wangu hiyo nafasi wani-advise George Mrima akae kando, evidence yangu ile niko nayo isikizwe, kwa sababu hata kuna mawakili walikuwa wanaandika kwa mitandao Kinoti hafai awe kwa hiyo ofisi, anafaa awe kamiti, kwa sababu niliona kuna siasa ndani yake, na mimi nimesimama na ukweli mpaka ijulikane ukweli. Hata kama wewe ni mtoto na uko na ID na uko na idea na uko na watu ambao wanakuamini, mpaka koti itanisikiza na mpaka Mrima akae kando, evidence yangu isikizwe, kwa sababu yeye alikataa. Na nataka kuambia Wakenya ile evidence niko naye si ya uongo. Jimmy Wanjigi ako, Mrima anajua iko, mawakili tumepresent. Kwa hivyo tunaomba JSC na waomba nikiwa mnyenyekevu, kama mtu ambaye anasimamia walemavu, hata sisi walemavu saa ingine tuwe tunasikizwa siku moja. Kwa hivyo namuomba Kinoti asiwe na wasiwasi. Naambiwa ni kwa sababu Kinoti ni Mmeru. Yes, naweza hata tokea bila hata nguo kwa sababu ni Mmeru. Kwa sababu Kinoti kazi ile anafanyia Wakenya hawafanyii kwa sababu ni Mmeru. Anafanya kazi ya haki, ya ukweli kwa kila mtu. Hata mimi nikiwa na makosa, Kinoti hawezi nisamea. Kwa hivyo kama court kweli walikuwa wanafuata ukweli, mbona Kinoti peke yake ndiye amefungwa? Ulifunga watu wengi, mkafunga Kinoti. Kufunga Kinoti 4 months, unafuatisha tena kufuatanisha warrant of arrest again. Umeconvict mtu na unampea warrant of arrest again. Kwa hivyo kuna interest iko ndani ya hii kesi, na ndio nimeumwa nikatoa pesa zangu nikatafuta lawyer ning'ang'anie haki yangu na ya Wakenya na ya mlemavu mwingine. Kenya hii, yule mlemavu ambaye atatumwa asiogope kutusiwa wala kutishiwa na watu. Tusimame ndio walemavu, tuwe sisi ndio tutainua Kenya. Juu Kenya pahali inaenda, unapata kama huduma namba inaanguswa na koti, na kuna yule ana evidence lakini huwezi jitokeza. Kwa hivyo walemavu, tutokeni tusimame na haki, na haki itatusaidia tuinua hata watoto wetu. Asanteni, nitaendelea na hii kesi mpaka mwisho. Wale wanatishia wanitishie, nimezoea kutishiwa. Mimi ni wrong, yule hawezi ogopa kitu.
Thank you. Now, the petition filed by Michael Makarina is provoked by the events that took place on the 18th November 2021. It will be remembered that on the 18th November 2021, Justice Anthony Mrima, learned judge, returned a sentence, sentencing Mr. George Kinoti to 4 months imprisonment, having found that he had been in contempt of court orders that were issued by Justice Chacha Mwita in a petition that had been filed by Jimmy Wanjigi and his wife. Now, immediately following the passing down of the conviction and the sentence by Justice Anthony Mrima, Mr. Michael Makarina got wind of word that there has been Mr. George Kinoti has been sentenced to imprisonment, and due to some information that he had in his custody, information that had not been initially shared with the court, he approached the office of the Honorable Attorney General, and he furnished them with documents that were meant to suggest, number one, that he had been appointed as an associate or as a representative of Mr. Jimmy Wanjigi to approach Mr. George Kinoti to help in the controversy that had arisen between Mr. George Kinoti and Mr. Jimmy Wanjigi. Number two, he also had information that there was a communication that had since been written by Willis Otieno, an advocate representing Mr. Jimmy Wanjigi, to the Firearms Board, representing their knowledge, their full knowledge, that they had information that these guns were indeed in the possession of the Firearms and Licensing Board. So, on the 22nd day of November 2021, the Honorable Attorney General preferred a review application before the learned judge in the hope that the court would correct its error after it had either been misled by the representatives by Mr. Wanjigi, and moreover, because there was information that had since become available to Mr. Makarina that was not availed before the court. So ultimately, we saw that the court rejected in its totality the application that was presented before it for review. And the court affirmed its initial position that indeed it had found Mr. George Maingi Kinoti in contempt of court orders, and it was convinced that the only desirable punishment that was available for Mr. Wanjigi, for Mr. George Kinoti, was an imprisonment for 4 months. So the petition that has been filed seeking the removal of the judge is simply but an inquiry, is simply an invitation to the Judicial Service Commission to call, to look at the conduct of the Honorable Judge as far as the case filed by Jimmy Wanjigi, and as far and to the extent that it relates to Mr. George Maingi Kinoti is concerned. So that in the fullness of time, it is hoped that the Judicial Service Commission shall find that indeed there was no evidence that the court acted upon or that influenced the mind of the court to arrive at the conclusion that indeed Mr. George Maingi Kinoti was in contempt of court orders in the initial place. And this should be understood from the point, as my senior Mr. Danstan Omari had mentioned, that there were 3 respondents in that case, and how the court arrives at the conclusion that it is only Mr. George Maingi Kinoti that is responsible for withholding these particular weapons is something that the client is yet to reconcile with. It is not understood up to this moment why of the 3 the judge singled out one single individual.